Hi everyone and welcome back to Original Blog. My name is Ori and today on the blog I'm here with Goerge Kamanda, and Goerge just published a new book of poems called Eventualities in Africa. And so today we're just going to talk a little bit about that. But before we get into it, Goerge, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Thank you very much. My name is Serria Kamanda. I'm from Serria Leone, West Africa. I've been living in the US for almost 6 years now, and I'm a graduate from St. Joseph's University and a prospective grad student for the fall of 2018. Overall, I see myself as a follower of Jesus Christ and a servant to humanity. Professionally, I would say I'm a poet, as you can see from the published poems. Also a social reformer, an activist, and somehow just want to effect change in the community. So that's Serria Kamanda in a nutshell.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
So Goerge, tell us, what is your motivation for writing books?
Well, at the beginning it was really how can I say, okay, let me just say it, like reform. You know, I wanted to effect change in my continent that I love so much. You know, I wanted to be a voice for the future. At the same time, I want to be a voice that can inspire, empower, and educate people, fellow Africans, you know, both home and abroad. You know, so personally, my main goal was to effect social change, like to change, to have a role to play in the status quo in Africa, you know, because as a continent, we need reforms, you know, in terms of governance, education, international affairs, you know, in our own domestic politics likewise, you know. So for me it was that intent. I have that goal, that passion to be able to affect social change in my community. So the motivation was that, you know, in a nutshell, it was just about affecting reform again. I wanted to be a voice. I want to inspire people, educate them, and also empower my fellow youth, because no matter what we do, it's a continent that we all love, despite, in my case, I'm an African outside now, looking in back to give back to my continent. So yeah, the motivation was just to effect such a change in Africa, and broadly also to inspire my fellow youth. Yeah.
Awesome. So Goerge, I've noticed that your writing style is a little different from that of poems we've read before. So could you tell us a little bit more about how you chose this unconventional style?
Well, most of it I would say is innate or natural, you know, but at the start of writing Eventualities in Africa, you know, since it's something that I want to have like a direct impact in terms of impacting people, you know, so I had 3 questions at the back of my mind, you know, do I believe in these things that I'm trying to write about, you know, and the other question was, can these ideas or these themes that I'm trying to depict or show others that these are the issues that affect in Africa, can they inspire, empower, and also educate others to know about these issues, you know, and also to be self-aware, you know. And the last question was, are these the truth, you know, are these real evidence, are these things that we see every day or on a daily basis, you know, are these things that affect the layman from the most remote of places with the most basic form of education. You know, I can say from the hilltops of Bont in Serria Leone to the endangered province of Katanga in Congo, you know, like these are issues that are affecting us as Africans. So after answering those questions in the affirmative, then I thought to myself, I said, how can I do this in a way that can inspire others? So writing as a reformer is really hard because you're trying to depict the problem, provide a solution, and also let the reader decide, provide a middle ground. So it was really hard, but I've been doing this a long time, you know, trying to create my own niche in terms of my writing, trying to create my own style, you know, in terms of affecting my own style in my writing, you know, in whatever I do. So at the end of the day, the vision, the intent, and the purpose to be part of the change in Africa, you know, was more important than my style. So I had to settle with one that I know natural, one that comes naturally, and also one that is more open and simple for me, you know. So basically, those were the main notions that I take from my writings, because I'm also teaching myself at the same time, whilst I'm trying to affect others, I'm also affecting my own life. Like I always say, reforming your mind is taking a great leap step forward, in reforming your society. So I'm doing that for myself, and I'm also doing that for others. So that was my intent, and that was my goal.
That's really cool.
Thank you.
All right, so Goerge, as a young African and professional, what would you say to people who view Africa as being a continent of death, poverty, and despair?
I'm glad you asked the question. Out of experience, we see that on a daily basis, but I'll gaze at them, look back at them positively and cautiously and say their proposition is mistaken. Africa is not a continent of death, diseases, and poverty. Notwithstanding that, Africa is a continent just like any other continent that has its frailties, its adequacies, its inadequacies, its ups and downs, its positives, and not so positives, So like, beside all of those factors, but Africa is a unique place. Africa is a continent that is reforming. Africa is a continent that is wizened, and Africa is a continent that purposely serve as a cradle to humanity, So yes, we have things to work on. As young Africans, we have to change the narrative of our own continent, because before we are going to be seen as a world order that is imagined, we need to emerge ourselves, So for me, that would be also like an advice, because we have to work hard to change the narrative of our continent. At the same time, we are doing it. People started. Countries like Rwanda, Tanzania, like if we can say, like the 10 most emerging economies now, most of them are in Africa. So we are not a continent of debt, diseases, or poverty. We're just a continent that has its frailties, just like any other continent, but the capstone of this is that Africa is wizened, Africa is reforming, and Africa is the world's last frontier. And that is what people should take in mind. And also for us Africans, we have to be that change. We have to change the narrative of our own continent for us to be seen as a global force, as a force that is imagined. So I'll look at them, I'll gaze at them and say, your proposition is mistaken, because Africa is imagined, Africa is reforming, and Africa is rising.
That's awesome. All right, Goerge, our last question for the day before we do your poem. Could you tell us what makes you original?
Wow. Well, the question itself is really nice, and at the same time it's very
difficult to answer.
To answer.
That's what everyone says.
But what makes me original is the fact that I seek God in everything that I do, whether I'm serving, whether I'm working, whether I'm studying, in anything that I do, I seek God, so I think that ability, that notion, because I have a very difficult past growing up, I was always sick, I've been in Ward 10 of different hospitals, doctor said, making it, but my mom stood over me, she prayed. I transformed my own life too, because of me, she became a Christian, she became a born-again Christian, so that is just a fact that I keep personally. So most people don't know my story, but like I always say, you can't take away the story from the man. The story is the man. And so standing here today, I just recall how transformative it has been since I left the shores of my beloved country, Serria Leone, almost 6 years ago, and today, the ladders that I've climbed, the adversities that I've overcome, so overall, that makes me original. I see God in everything that I do, and it's something that I'm proud of, and it's something that I hope to instill not only in myself, but people who know me and my close friends, and also, in the future, my family, I would love to instill that on my own son, so what makes me original is the fact that I seek God in everything I do. It's like an immutable prerequisite of knowing who I am. It's a servant of God, a servant to humanity. So that is what I wish to do, and that is what I think, that is the height I'm trying to climb. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming for this interview. You guys, please check out Goerge's books. I will link them down below. They are both going to be listed, and next we're going to do a short little reading of one of your poems.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me this opportunity of sharing my poem. And yes, I'll be sharing Mama Salone. It's an exciting time in my country, so it's an opportunity for me to be part of the change, you know. This is a visionary poem that I did, and I only used two prepositions, from and to, which is to express a past, a present, and where we're going. From the fringes of the Western Mountains to the western shores of Freetown. From the clutches of colonialism to the spirit of self-independence. From the outbreak of vicious civil wars to the constant notion of peace. From the holes of tribal disparity to the toleration of every ethnicity. From the pits of poverty to the rise of basic sustainability. From the hands of kleptomania fingers to the increasing roles of accountability. From the dark ages of socioeconomic progress to the rising evolution of productivity. From the mindset of knowing not all wants are satisfied to the quest of taking issues one by one. From the destructive remain of warfare to the building of society brick by brick. From the outcry for political participation to the rise of an active citizenry. From the wakes of instability to the rise of social activity. From the desperation the rainy season brings to the optimism the dry season brings. From the anthem of Western education to the footstool for educational opportunities. From the fear of cultural degeneration to the hope of social integration. From the vicious plague of deadly diseases to the hopes of achievable recoveries. And from the outcry for traditional roles to the purposeful regeneration of a tradition. Mama Salone, our home. Thank you.